Hello everybody, this is Johns Hopkins with Baltimore Heritage, and we're back with another of our 5-minute Histories videos. And today I'm in a little slice of Druid Hill Park, just on the west side of a very busy Ockentrawley Terrace. Lots of cars these days, a wide road. It almost feels like we're not in the park, but we decidedly are in the park. And behind me is the superintendent's house, the caretaker's house for the park. Today, the caretaker, at least for this house and this little slice of the park, is the Parks and People Foundation, and I'm thrilled to be joined by Frank Lance, who heads up the foundation, in just a few minutes. But let me jump in and start with a little bit of history about where we are, and we're going to start in 1860. That's when Mayor Thomas Swan procured the purchase of a country estate, Druid Hill, from the Rogers family. And on October 19th, 1860, Mayor Swan presided over an enormous sort of hello to the park, 10,000 people cheering. The Rogers family walked away with just shy of $500,000, and Baltimore City got this fabulous new park. The city jumped right into turning the former country estate into a public park. They built paths and all sorts of gazebos. And pretty soon, the park board, the group that oversees the park, recognized the need for a house for their chief caretaker. But there was a little bit of a lag between recognizing the need and actually doing something about it. In fact, it was a 12-year lag, but by 1872, this house was erected. They chose an architect for it in a young architect named George Frederick. He was a natural choice. By that time, he had already designed several structures in the park, a number of the gazebos, the Chinese pavilion, that wonderful Moorish structure that sort of sits atop Druid Hill Lake, and he had renovated the Rogers Mansion. I have to say a quick thank you to him for doing that and keeping it standing. Some years later, that's where I got married, so a personal thank you there. But pretty soon in 1872, the caretakers started to move in. The first one was a gentleman named August Fall, and he and his family were here. And in fact, there were a number of caretaker families here until about 1891. And that's when the current one, a gentleman named Thomas Hamilton, got in a spat with the park board. He wanted to expand the house. The park board didn't want to pay for it. And so in a huff, he said, well, fine, I'm leaving. And the park board said, well, fine, we're going to rent it out and make a little bit of money. They rented it out at first to a bike club. Biking around the park was all the rage. And then to a golf club. There was a 9-hole golf course here for a while over the objection of the park board chair. His board overrode him. And then his wife overrode him. His wife was an avid golfer and apparently played here regularly. After the golf course and was through, it was rented out to a number of families, including one family called the Cole family. You may not recognize that name, but I'm sure you're going to recognize the Coles. I think it's grandson or great-grandson, and that's Chris Van Hollen. Senator Van Hollen's family spent some time here. After the families left, went back to the superintendent's house all the way up through the 1980s, when it was the house for the director of the zoo, a gentleman named Brian Rutledge. He and his family lived here. The house was in good shape and the stables were in good shape. And on weekends, you could see him and his family riding around the park on their horses on afternoon strolls. Finally, 2 odd chapters before I turn it over to Mr. Lance. One is after he left, it sat vacant for a number of years, but then the soul singer Richie Havens decided he wanted to build an environmental youth center here. He had been friends with the zoo director, and the city leased it to him for $1 a year. But the problem was he didn't do anything, and then he stopped paying his $1, and then he stopped answering the phone calls from the city, and he kind of disappeared. And that's when the building went vacant. It was set on fire a couple times. And by the time Parks and People was interested in 2007, it was a royal mess. In fact, the poison ivy and other vines were so thick that you could barely get to the house. And the first order of business for restoring it was bringing in a herd of goats to chew through everything, which they did in short order. In 2014, Parks and People moved in. We at Baltimore Heritage gave them a preservation award for their heroic effort, including the goats. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Lance to say a few words about what goes on here today.
Hello, I'm Frank Lance. I'm the President and CEO of Parks and People. Welcome to our 9-acre home. As has been stated, we're here on the far west end of Druid Hill Park. We're literally across the street from Mondawmin Mall. So welcome to our campus. We started in 1984. It was a vision of a great philanthropist, great woman by the name of Sally Michael, who, working with then Mayor Donald Schaefer, created Parks and People. The idea was to work with Baltimore City to give green space, parks, and playgrounds to all of Baltimore. We believe that everybody deserves green space. Sally believed it, the mayor believed it, and we made it come true. So here we are now, 38 years later. We're here on this west end of the park, and we're at the circa 1860 Superintendent's home. We're working now on this historic site, this historic venue, and we're bringing this to all of Baltimore. This is a place where we bring our programming. So for those of you who don't know about Parks and People, we serve over 1,500 kids annually per year by way of our programs, and thousands more by way of the parks and green space that we build. So here we run a camp, a 6-week summer academic camp, because what we want to do is make sure that all of Baltimore can read. So for kids that are interested, rising first graders through 5th grade, in a reading camp, a STEM camp during the summer, Parks and People offers it, and it's absolutely free. And we have a program for high schoolers. It is a paid internship program. We will teach the environment. We will talk about water quality, tree quality, air quality, historic structures, and it's a paid internship program. We will also work with workforce development and college and career readiness. We do that here on the camp. But you're really here today because you want to hear about this structure, this 1860 structure. And I want to talk to you about it. It is now a venue that we've brought back to life. Yes, at one point goats had to clear the land, but that's no longer the key. Now we're at a place where we have a venue that's open to the public. So do we still run programming out of it? We absolutely do. But we also welcome you to this site. We do weddings. We do Easter egg hunts. We have a picnic in the park here. We're looking at having a movie night. We want to make sure that you understand this park that now belongs to Baltimore City, 774 acres that you heard earlier about. Here on this west end, it still belongs to all of Baltimore. Yes, Parks and People has our headquarters here, but we welcome you. We run programming to make Baltimore better, and by way of making Baltimore better, we want you to know that this venue is also open to you. I'm Frank Lance, President and CEO. Come and see us here at Parks and People.